Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for today's annual general meeting. I'm sure you will appreciate that this is under unfamiliar circumstances due to the impact of the coronavirus. Given government measures in relation to social distancing and public gatherings, this meeting will be convened with the minimum necessary attendees, 2 directors, who are both shareholders, and a representative of Albion Capital Group, LLP, as Company Secretary. Today's annual general meeting is being broadcast over the internet via a live streamed service, which has been set up to give shareholders the opportunity to take some part in the proceedings in these unusual times. My name is Robin Field. With your permission, I will be your chairman for today's AGM. I would like to introduce my board colleague, Martin Fines, who joins me here at Albion Capital's office in London. Thomas Chambers and Fiona Woolacombe have joined via the video link, and I hope you can see them as panelists alongside my picture on the screen. Before I move on, I would just like to say that the board is sorry that we cannot hold the AGM from our usual venue, but we are taking the safety of our shareholders as paramount, and for that reason, the board has decided to use this approach for the AGM. The company's articles of association do not permit an AGM to be held by virtual video and audio functionality. This is the reason why Thomas, Fiona, and shareholders cannot interact and be heard during the AGM proceedings. This is something the board are looking into to allow continued shareholder engagement in the future. The quorum for the annual general meeting is 2 members entitled to vote in person or by proxy. This has been met, and therefore I declare the meeting open. Before we continue with the normal course of business, I would like to take this opportunity to thank shareholders for sending their questions through the new chairman email address of kaychair@albion.capital. A comprehensive question and answer schedule will be posted on the internet on the website after the AGM. I am pleased that we are able to continue engaging with shareholders during these unprecedented times, and I do hope that at the end of the AGM, you will give us any feedback you may have to this same email address. As I mentioned before, we have received your questions, and a comprehensive list will be published on the website after the close of this AGM. However, I would like to take this opportunity to ask a few of the most frequently answered questions. Some of the issues Robert will deal with later in his presentation if we make that work, and if he doesn't, I will come back and say something about them. First question I shall answer is, how sustainable are dividends going forward? The board is very conscious of the importance of dividends to shareholders, and its intention is to continue to pay 2 dividends per annum as long as liquidity permits. We continue to target a dividend yield of at least 5% per annum. The next question we've been asked is, what are you doing regarding buybacks? The company temporarily suspended its share buyback in March 2020 due to the uncertainty caused by COVID. Buybacks were resumed on 22nd April 2020, subject to the overall constraint that such purchases are in the company's interest, including the maintenance of sufficient resources for investment in existing and new portfolio companies, and the continued payment of dividends to shareholders. The level of buybacks until the announcement of the company's interim results, expected to be during August 2020, has been limited to £500,000. It is the board's intention for such share buybacks to be at around a 5% discount to net asset value, so far as the market conditions permit. Next question, what is the board's view on directors' tenure over 9 years? The board does not consider that a director's length of service reduces his or her ability to act independently, and therefore has no set policy for limiting tenure. All the current directors are considered independent. We will now proceed with the formal business of the AGM. Notice convening the AGM has been in your hands for the statutory period, and with your permission, I will take the notice as read. There have been no questions from shareholders on the AGM resolutions, and therefore I will proceed. There will be a short pause while we share the presentation outlining the proxy votes. I would like to point out that although there are only a limited number of shareholders present that can vote in person, you will see as the votes are displayed on your screen that the majority of shareholders have voted in favour of all proposed resolutions. The first item on the agenda is to receive and adopt the company's accounts for the year ended 31st December 2019, together with a strategic report and the report of the directors and auditor. Will all those in favour please raise their hands? Thank you. Any against? With your permission, I do not intend to read out the proxy votes after every resolution, but we will show them on the screen as each resolution comes up. Does anyone object to this arrangement?
No.
Thank you. I declare the resolution carried. The next resolution is to approve the directors' remuneration policy. Those in favour? Any against? Thank you. I declare the resolution carried. The next item on the agenda is to approve the directors' remuneration report for the year ended 31st December 2019. Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? I declare the resolution carried. For the next resolution, I would like to pass the chair to my co-director, Martin Fines.
The next item on the agenda is the re-election of Robin Field as a director of the company, and I have pleasure in proposing Robin for re-election. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. I declare the resolution carried. Back to you, Robin.
Thank you, Martin. The next item on the agenda is the re-election of Thomas Chambers as a director of the company, and I have pleasure in proposing Thomas for re-election. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. I declare the resolution carried. The next item on the agenda is the re-election of Martin Fines as director of the company, and I have pleasure in proposing Martin for re-election. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. I declare the resolution carried. The next item on the agenda is the re-election of Fiona Woolacombe as a director of the company, and I have pleasure in proposing Fiona for re-election. Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? I declare the resolution carried. I now propose the reappointment of BDO LLP as auditor of the company to hold office from the conclusion of this meeting to the conclusion of the next meeting at which the accounts are to be laid. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. I declare the resolution carried. The next item on the agenda is to authorise the directors to agree the auditor's remuneration. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the continuation of the company as a venture capital trust for a further 5 years. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. I declare the resolution carried. The next resolution is to allow the directors to allot shares. Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? I declare the resolution carried. The next item is to be considered as a special resolution that the directors be empowered to disapply preemption rights. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. I declare the resolution carried. The next item, which again is being proposed as a special resolution, is to authorise the company to make one or more market purchases of ordinary shares in the capital of the company. Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? I declare the resolution carried. Now, that concludes the formal business of the annual general meeting, but I hope now that we can have the presentation from Robert, who is going to give us his presentation, God willing, live now.
Right, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Welcome to everyone to this update from Albion Capital for the King's Arms Yard VCT PLC AGM. And my apologies in advance for the transmission qualities of earlier. Sadly, webinars via laptop are not quite News at 10 standard. So my name is Robert Whitby-Smith, and I am a partner of Albion Capital. And as usual, I'll provide a summary of last year along with a view on the outlook. Is it possible to put the slides up? Perfect. Yeah, if we move on to the next slide. So the investment returns, as you can see, were modest in 2019, following a good run over the longer term. Other Albion VCTs witnessed stronger performances last year, and the primary difference for those shareholders who hold stakes in a number of our VCTs, which many do, was that King's Arms Yard did not hold stakes in Radnor House, Twickenham, or PSE, which were made before King's Arms Yard entered the Albion stable, and those investments have sold last year at a good return. So if we go on to the next slide. However, the performance in 2019 is overshadowed by the outbreak of the pandemic in the first quarter of 2020. And primarily due to the outbreak, the Q1 valuation saw a roughly 10% decline in net asset value. That's in the context of the FTSE All-Share falling approximately 25% in that first quarter, and the impact for K is mitigated by the amount held in cash and renewable energy assets, which was approximately 25%, and then the holdings in B2B software companies and digital healthcare companies, which have proved resilient so far from the pandemic. And in addition, as Albion's strategy has been over some time, we have a low exposure in the funds to consumer-facing businesses, which have been particularly hit by the pandemic. So if we go on to the next slide. Thank you. The slide shows the performance over the longer term, as at December 2019 and March 2020. And as you can see, despite the 10% fall in NAV in Q1, the 5-year total return of approximately 25% remains in line with our target. So on to the next slide. This slide sets out sector weightings for K, and you can see the limited exposure to consumer-facing sectors. And the focus area for new investment remains software and healthcare, and we expect these proportions of the overall pie to increase over time. This slide provides a sense of the stage of businesses which the portfolio is invested in. Nearly 90%, as you can see, is invested in companies with over £1 million of turnover, and excluding renewable energy sector, which typically doesn't employ many people, 97% are in portfolio companies employing more than 20 people. So they're not startups, they're early stage and scale-ups. On to the next slide, thank you. This slide shows the principal cash flows for the business. The fundraising is the amount shown in each tax year, the rest are in each accounting period. But as you can see, a number of exits during the year, but slightly down on previous year. The investment rate has increased in 2019 in a combination of new and follow-on investments. And share buybacks have remained relatively flat, as have dividends, allowing for the additional number of shares in issue following the fundraising. And as you can see, in what was a flattish year last year, there were no major movements in valuation, apart from Provica, which has been trading strongly. The investment strategy remains the same, and we remain focused on enterprise software and healthcare, which we see as sectors which will grow over the longer term. This slide highlights one of the 6 new investments during the year. Speechmatics was founded by a world expert in speech recognition, Tony Robinson, and they have built a low footprint universal language model, which enables leading accuracy across a high level of languages, not just in the cloud, but importantly on-premise and on-device. And we see on-premise and on-device as becoming increasingly important for security and commercial reasons. Interestingly, the CEO of Google announced last year that they would be building a low footprint ASR engine, endorsing the direction of travel. As we expect, there will be an increasing amount of follow-on investment in our portfolio as the early stage companies develop, and Provica is an example of that. Provica focuses on repurposing drugs for pediatric use, and sales of its first licensed drug are going very well across Europe, and its pipeline of future drugs is progressing well, and we invested further in the year to support growth. Other new investments we made in 2019, Avora is using data analysis to improve business decision making. Elliptic is fighting financial crime in cryptocurrencies and digital assets. Speechmatics, I've mentioned. Limitless is leveraging the cloud and machine learning to transform customer services for clients including Microsoft and Unilever. Clear Review offers software to automate and improve human resources. And Imandra offers automated testing software, enabling users to understand algorithm behavior, which is in the very exciting field of explainable AI. As mentioned previously, there's been no change to the sectors we're focusing on. The pandemic, if anything, strengthens the thesis that these sectors are more likely to grow over the next few years than consumer-facing sectors. We particularly like the quality of revenue from enterprise software businesses, where once a differentiated product has been built once, it can be sold multiple times at a high margin with a contracted recurring revenue model. We think that whilst some areas of healthcare will be deprioritized, as the focus is fighting the pandemic, we think the areas of healthcare that we focus on, including digital health, will continue to grow strongly over the near and long-term future. The next slide, please. The pandemic continues to impact the portfolio and the economy. The medium to long-term impact will remain uncertain for some time. Pressing pause on so much of the economy for such a long time is unprecedented, and no one knows when the pause button will be unpressed or what the long-term impact will be of having pressed it down for so long. However, we are fortunate that much of the VCT portfolio serves areas of the economy which have not been shut down, including renewable energy and mission-critical enterprise software, including cybersecurity and software enabling business continuity and remote working. And as ever, there are attractive new investment opportunities. So thank you for listening. Hopefully the connection was adequate.
Thank you, Robert. I said at the beginning that I was hoping that Robert would answer a number of questions that have been asked, and there were indeed questions on the impact of COVID-19, and I hope you agree with me that Robert has dealt with those very comprehensively. So, having concluded our formal business, having seen Robert's presentation, I'm going to thank all shareholders who have joined this live streaming of the AGM. As I said earlier, the board welcomes any feedback you may have, and you can give feedback by sending an email to kaychair@albion.capital. And for those of you who are interested in seeing all the questions that were asked and their corresponding answers, these will be available within 24 hours on the Albion website. Many thanks for attending this hybrid AGM, and I do hope you all stay well and safe.